I would disagree with that.
I know, but you know what
I know what he's
saying.
saying. Yeah.
You and these two guys operate 20 to 30 yards apart. So to Kirby's point, and he said the game day guys asked me how I'm going to slow him down or what I'm going to do Ryan Williams. He goes, you either double Ryan Williams and leave Jalen Milroe without a spy, or you spy Jalen Milroe and leave Ryan Williams in single coverage. Which one are you going to pick? There's no good answer there to that, Lance.
Yeah, and I think just on that point, if you're asking me what I take out of this game, I mean, is there a possibility that Jalen Milroe could become the greatest Alabama quarterback of all time? I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but the numbers he's putting up, they are next level. And then Ryan Williams, I know we were on a text thread Saturday night, but if he stays healthy, there's no way. As good as the history of these Alabama receivers have been, I don't know how he doesn't become the greatest receiver in Alabama history.
You know, the one thing I've always loved about you is that you're okay going 110 miles an hour into the future.
No problem.
Yeah. And
I mean, Ryan Williams was built like that. Yeah. The plays he made, the body control.
Well, no, he's absolutely deliberate.
I'm talking about Jalen Milroe first. In order to get in that conversation, you got to win a national championship, at least one.
Right. Well,
you would think we're painting Bryce Young as that for a while. I don't think history is going to show that Bryce Young is that.
Yeah, because he never won one. You know, I think if Bryce would have held on in Indianapolis, they win that game. I think you can definitely make that argument. Yeah. So Jalen obviously needs to win one. I don't know, man. He just I don't know what the weakness is, and I don't know if you guys were watching any of the ESPN pregame yesterday.
I saw this on social media. I was not watching it live.
I thought it was interesting because they were talking about the game, and they were like, this is viewed as the number one pick, and I forgot who it was. Maybe Rex Ryan was like, why is Jalen Hurts not the number one pick? Yeah, Jalen Hurts. There I go again. Jalen Milroe not the number one overall pick.
Yeah, they were talking about like Beck's supposed to be the number one pick, and Rex Ryan said, well, why the hell is it not Jalen Milroe? You watched that game last night.
Yeah, I think his stock had dropped even before that game, but I did.
You talking about Beck's stock?
Beck's stock had dropped before that game a little bit on being the number one overall pick, but I was this close when it was 28-0 to sending out a little GIF that had one of those cartoons, the duck back in the day that threw money away out the window and stuff. It was an old Looney Tunes duck. I was going to say Carson Beck's draft stock in the first half where they were just burning money. I thought his money, he was throwing away millions of dollars in the first half.
Yeah, he went and collected it in the second half.
But then he came back, so I'm glad I didn't send that out because for a moment they were going to lose the game. But that was my takeaway. I went into this game wanting to see, Lance's pick to be the head coach, Kalen DeBoer, more importantly, Nick Sheridan and Kane Womack do the game planning against great defensive minds, Kirby Smart, Schumann, Will Muschamp, who's there Sunday to Fridays as an analyst. Those are great defensive minds. What would they do? And for the first 18 minutes of that game, Kirby Smart, Schumann, Muschamp's on paper somewhere, his game plan, they looked dazed and confused. You have to admit that's an IQ staff, great brains of defensive football, and they were hit over the head. And on the flip side of that, Bama's defense was confusing Carson Beck. I thought the game plan that they came in to make Kirby Smart and that staff look that confused was an amazing coaching job.
I agree. And, at halftime, I didn't know what direction this game was going to go. I was like, damn, how bad could this be? Yeah. But Nick Sheridan, they showed him up at the box early. It was like he couldn't call a wrong play. He was doing everything exactly right. And when they were showing him, he looked uncomfortable like being shown. Obviously not uncomfortable calling those plays. And I think that was one of the big question marks coming into this game. How would these coordinators be able to handle this? But, to your point, defensively, and what Kane Womack was able to do. Georgia 3 of 15 on third downs.
5 and 5 on fourth downs.
That's so weird that Georgia could not convert a third down. They were phenomenal on fourth down.
And the 4 turnovers. I thought, all in all, it was just, I don't know. It was a great performance from the coordinators as well.
I would say Alabama fans, from the moment that Nick retired, and that was the only guy you said, Kalen DeBoer would be an amazing hire. Kalen DeBoer would be an amazing hire. And I know that he had game planned a couple of big games against Dan Lanning. I know he had won a semifinal game against Sark in Texas. But to resonate with the Alabama fans, that was going to be a big one Saturday. And I think, they were all wishful thinking on what you said about him being the perfect hire. I think they left that game going, man, I feel really, really good about who Alabama hired.
Well, you know, I knew the guy could coach. More times than not, things do not live up to the hype. But Saturday night, Georgia, Alabama, 41-34, definitely lived up to the hype. It is unlocked with our man, Fox's Brock Huard. It is brought to you by mybookie.ag, where they will double your initial deposit. Make sure you put in that code next round at mybookie.ag. Football season in full effect, so is winning season. Double your initial deposit, mybookie.ag. Look, I know it's in our neck of the woods here, but you are a college football fan. It's what you do for a living. You played at the highest level of both college and on Sundays in the NFL. Games like we saw Saturday night with two quality opponents like that, they don't get any better.
No. It was pretty cool, and it was one of the rare occasions, Lance, that we have this year as a crew that we got to go back to the hotel. No one was getting out. Our game was delayed. Actually, Kevin Kugler got out. He got on a 9:20 Frontier flight to Charlotte so he could call the Bengals-Panthers game, although it was narrowly close to missing that flight, and there was no pilot originally. So that was a little problematic. But all the rest of us got back into our hotel, into our meeting room, ordered a bunch of pizzas and drinks, and got to take that thing in. And you said not many times does it live up to it. And at halftime, I don't think any of us thought it would live up to it, right? I mean, at halftime, it was so one-sided, and it didn't feel like Georgia could and would have any answers for all that Alabama was doing to them. But boy, did they ever, right down to the wire. And 100%, man, it was must-see TV. The only problem was the game got so good that I just kept stuffing my face with pizza and pizza and pizza. So that was the only issue for me, was Sunday morning waking up with eating way, way too much pizza.
Yeah, I actually wanted to see it go to overtime. I didn't want it to end. It was that good. First thing I'll start with, and before we got started here just a couple of minutes late on Unlocked, a couple of things on both sides there. But you heard us having a conversation earlier this morning on the next round, and about how the ESPN guys, and specifically Rex Ryan, said yesterday when they were talking about the game on the set, I know this Carson Beck guy was supposed to be the number one overall pick. Why would you not look at Jalen Milroe? And I never thought he would be in this conversation. I did think with him coming back this year, he would have an opportunity to be maybe into the first round kind of pick. But the way this guy is playing right now, completing 73% of his passes, and you can't defend what he does naturally with his legs. He has just turned into an outstanding quarterback.
He has in this system, and we talked about that when the hire was made way back when. And at that point, obviously, Ryan Grubb, who'll be calling plays tonight on Monday Night Football against the Lions, was a part of that initial conversation. But it's bigger than just Ryan Grubb or Nick Sheridan, and frankly, maybe even Kalen DeBoer. I mean, it is all of their shared histories together. And I told you going into it, I think I was listening to a replay of that interview with Joel Klatt saying it was a perfect hire. We've talked about that for months on end, that this is about as QB friendly a system as you're ever going to find, Lance. I mean, go back through all the years of all the different guys at Southern Illinois, at Eastern Michigan, in South Dakota, obviously at Fresno with Haener, and Penix there at Washington. Like, man, if you're a quarterback, this is the system you want to be in. Ask Geno Smith what this system has been like through the first 3 weeks of the season. I mean, it's awesome. It gives you answers. And I can't tell you how frustrated I was. I'm not even an Alabama fan, but watching the first half of the Rose Bowl last year and just seeing there were no answers, and it was sack after sack after sack, and Milroe really had nowhere to go. He wasn't seeing the game at all. He wasn't seeing the field, and they made adjustments in the second half and got the QB run game going and everything else. But this isn't just QB run game. I mean, this is the system. This is the QB passing game. And oh, by the way, as Kirby said after the game, like with maybe one of the most elite running backs in college football, that he's got that in his holster. Now, I'm not going there because I've seen Ashton Jeanty a couple times and some of the other great running backs in college football.
I said the same thing earlier when that got brought up on the show. I was like, well, you didn't stay up and watch Jeanty. You haven't watched him even in a loss against Oregon. That guy has been outstanding.
He's unbelievable. And this might be the year of the running back. There are a lot of there are a lot of elite running backs in college football. I think there are more elite running backs in college football than there are quarterbacks this season. But Milroe's entered that conversation. There's just no question. And when he runs, he's the first guy that I've seen run, Lance. I don't know if you agree or disagree, but to my eye, he's the first guy I've seen run that looks like Lamar. That's got a gear. Now, he's bigger, he's thicker, he's stronger. But as far as like a gear, like you're not supposed to be able to do that. You're not supposed to be able to bust that angle. Quarterbacks aren't supposed to be that quick. And Lamar was always that way at Louisville, and I've waited for somebody since then. There have been some guys close, but man, Milroe game speed feels like he's the first guy since Lamar that is just at a different gear.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was when they went up 21 or 28 in the first half, but when he hit the edge on that quarterback keep, and I just, because I know just watching him the speed, and I think Georgia, even though they saw him last year, was a little thrown off by the speed, because once he hit that corner, I was like, he's gone. And for him to be able to keep the balance on the sideline and just take off, I mean, it is a different gear. And that's the first time I've ever heard that. But you're right, with the acceleration, with the gear, with the vision, he's a different quarterback based on how physical he is. But it's a pretty light comparison.
Kyler Murray's quicker. Like, his feet are quicker, right? Like, when he moved in college and even in the NFL, like, he's got such unbelievable kind of short area quickness. So I bet his acceleration is better. But I'm just talking about, like, yeah, man, that threat to that defense, that at any point, if he's got a crease or he can bust an angle, like, I'd be real curious to know what he hit miles per hour wise. If it's the NFL, we know every stadium has got all the laser technology, and you kind of know in real time exactly what speed I bet you he hit 22 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's not Ryan Williams maybe at 23 miles an hour, but it's darn close. And it's football speed. He's going to go to the combine and probably, I mean, I'd recommend running. He may run in the upper 4.4s, but it's football speed that when those pads come on, he kind of feels like he speeds up, and just plays, again, at a gear that we've seen very few guys at that position do.
On the other side, Carson Beck, a horrific first half. I got to give him credit, though. Because everybody was like, this guy is so overrated. And look, he didn't play a great game, but the way he bounced back in the second half, when they're down 30-7, and for him to keep his poise and start making plays, and he really started to pick that defense apart. He ends up with 439 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have the 3 picks. That was the difference in the game. But I still, for him to be able to bounce back in that setting and give them the lead with a couple of minutes to go, I was impressed with him as well in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's positive, but at that point, Lance, honestly, it's like, and I'm not discrediting that, but it's also, we got nothing to lose, and you got a defense that's starting to play a little bit differently, right? That is trying to just kind of keep things in front of him. I thought still his footwork, and even in that second half when he was making plays, was still a little just disheveled. I didn't love the Kentucky game either. Now, maybe that doesn't look as bad because obviously Kentucky went into Oxford and beat Ole Miss, and Jackson Dart couldn't do what Beck did, and that's find a way to win. But even that Kentucky game too, I thought, I don't know. I don't know if I'm feeling, like an elevate everybody around me. I don't know if I'm feeling a number 1 or a number 2 pick that, was being talked about. And coming out of that game with the 3 picks and just the really rugged, about as bad a half as you could possibly play, again, I kind of walk away from that game. Man, he's opened the door. He's opened the door for some of the others in this upcoming draft class to make some strides. And I'll tell you, dude, the guy that I saw in person, I liked Shedeur from afar. I've watched the TV copies. I've seen a number of the games. I liked him from afar, but getting up close and watching the coaching tape and being around him and seeing him live, yeah, I think old Beck opened the door for Shedeur, especially if he gets any run game and any of the help that he got over the weekend. They may win 8 or 9 games this season.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, before we shift to what you saw in Orlando with Colorado just coming in and blitzing UCF, if you had one quarterback, one game right now in college football, who would your quarterback be? Because I got killed after the North Dakota State win. I was like, this might be the best quarterback in football in Shedeur, just because the offensive line, he's got great skill around him, but the offensive line was awful last year. It's a little improved this year, but he's still under duress all the time. And there's not a throw that Shedeur can't make. And watching him again on Saturday, I mean, he's terrific.
Yeah. College game, Lance, is different than like the NFL. Like if we're projecting into the NFL, like who's the guy of this college class that you would take at the NFL level? it's different college game and prisoner of the moment. It is Jalen. I mean, what he can do running and then being competent enough throwing. He's not the most natural thrower. And I think you even saw that in some of those throws. The guys around him, he can be a vicinity passer. And if it's in the vicinity, they're going to get it and then do something with it afterwards. But for the college game, because of just the threat that he has, and as Kirby said, like I can't bracket Ryan Williams. I can't go double cover guys because the minute you pull eyes away from him, and then on top of it, the number of coverages you can't play against him. You can't play man or two man or turn your back on him. I mean, he's just a different. So right now in the college game with what we're seeing in Kalen's system, yeah, I would think in the college game right now, it'd be hard for me to pick against Jalen Milroe.
So we'll get to this game in a minute. I think the biggest surprise for me Saturday was Kentucky going into Oxford, knocking out Ole Miss. But the second biggest surprise for me was UCF, and I laid the 14.5. I thought that they would destroy Colorado. I know when we talked last week on Unlocked, brought to you by mybookie.ag, you said, I don't know if UCF's defense can hold up against this Colorado offense. You were right. Colorado, they were up 14. They never trailed. They were in control the entire game, and they win it going away. That, to me, is the best 60 minutes of football Deion Sanders has had since he got to Boulder. I thought that they looked like a top 25 team. I don't know if it can hold up because they have, some really difficult games in the Big 12 coming up on the back half of the schedule. But, man, what an impressive performance from the Buffaloes.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with you. Maybe save for TCU, but at that point there was nothing known about them, right? There was no tape there. What are they going to do? What are they going to even run? So, and TCU coming off of the title game appearance the year before. Now, it turned out TCU was obviously nowhere near that, but I would say this one and that first one were similar in that way. Like, man, this is a buttoned up operation. Like, this isn't just Warren Sapp and T.O. and Michael Irvin and, all the star power and all the jewelry and all the glitz and all the, man, this is not pomp and circumstance. This is substance. That was the most substantive win and the most substantive play as a group, that we have seen out of Deion. And and if you would have told me and called me before the game, so what do you think? I would have said, man, I don't know. These guys left a day early. Totally chaotic. I ended up leaving a day early with those guys, not with them, but on the same day, flying in. On Thursday, they were originally going to practice down in Tampa. That got totally washed out. Orlando or UCF was nice enough to say, hey, you can come into our indoor facility at night. We're all done. So at least they got to run around a little bit. But to a man, they all said, we're not showing anything. We're not Bill Belichick paranoid, but we're also not stupid. We're not going to show any of our stuff. So it was really just to get a sweat and run around. Friday is a walkthrough day, so there really was not much practice time. But of everything that Deion said, and there was some good, cool stuff, his line to Allison on the field after the game was the most profound. And it kind of hit me between my wide-spaced eyes at that point. Like, man, I wish I would have made that point in game. And that is, when you get away and we're all together for 4 days, you felt that. You felt the closeness. That sometimes that proximity can separate, right? If you don't like one another and you don't get along, a lot of these stars and a lot of that talent does get along. And then the whole rest of the guys got to spend a bunch of time together in the plane and in the hotel and around the hotel and at the, at UCF's facility. Like, you just bonded, right? There was a closeness that came through that. And man, they get a bye this week and then they'll have K-State at home. That's going to be like all their home games, absolutely off the charts electric. They play that game, Lance, they've got as good a chance as anybody in the Big 12. Can they play that game will be the real question moving ahead.
I know in some of these coaches' meetings that you guys have before the game, some of those things better left unsaid. But, Deion, I still think Brock, he's viewed as a guy that it's kind of a gimmick still. Like, people don't believe this is a real football coach. Again, that's the best I've seen Colorado look. But what do you gather when you sat down and met with Deion? Like, do you believe he's a guy that's going to be like, once Shiloh and Shador are gone on to the NFL after this year, is this really where he wants to, plant the flag and like?
Sure. I don't know about that. It would be intriguing if they go, I think their ceiling's like 9-3, and it's going to be tough because if they get an injury or two on the O-line or D-line, it's very problematic. I mean, their depth falls off pretty significantly at the line of scrimmage. If they are able to stay pretty healthy, and there were a couple guys that didn't make the trip that I think are in that little window of Do I want a red shirt? Do I want to save some eligibility? I think they would be best suited to come back. I think maybe after watching that game, they're like, you know what, man, this train's going to be pretty fun this year. And this journey could be pretty stinking cool. And we have a chance maybe to win 8 or 9 games if they stay healthy. If that were to happen, Lance, you tell me. You tell me what happens in Gainesville. You tell me what happens. The Plains feels like a little bit of a stretch. And maybe even D Hunt, as people know, like, oof, that's some dangerous stuff there. But to go back to Florida, I mean, Florida guy will tell you, and told us in our production meeting, there's no talent in the whole country like Florida. Best high school football is in Texas. The best athletes are in Florida. And he loves the Florida guys and the way they're wired. He's got like 16 of them on his roster. So I think, again, cart way before the horse. Let's see how this thing continues to play out week to week. But I'll say this too, again, substance-wise, I asked him, Lance, like, on the field, one of the questions I love to ask these coaches, if our cameras could see your eyes of what you're looking for and what you're watching, where will they be, especially early in the game? And Guy nailed it. He's like, our center has got to play way better because he's really struggled right in the middle of their offensive line. And then our edges have been just underperformers. We got too much talent to play the way we have on the edge. And both those positions, as that game unfolded, played the best games of their season, not even close second, and played a big role in them winning that game. So it kind of tells you some of the football acumen he brings as well.
It's on Live with Fox's Brock Huard right here. It's brought to you by mybookie.ag. Double that initial deposit. Very simple. Put in that code next round, and they will double your initial deposit. Mybookie.ag, NFL doubleheader tonight. You've got player props available right now. Sign up right there at mybookie.ag and double your initial deposit. I said this weird SEC Media Days. It was college football playoff or disaster for Ole Miss because everybody was talking about this schedule is an absolute joke. They've only got a couple of potential landmines, and Ole Miss did Ole Miss things, and they found a loss as a 16-point favorite against Kentucky. I thought Brock Vandergriff was really good in this game. It looked like Ole Miss, that 11 o'clock kick, they had just kind of a hangover going into that game. They just never really seemed to be in routine. This is a bad loss for Ole Miss, though.
Yep, just kind of sleepy, right? And I've been part of those 11 a.m. broadcasts and in different markets, and the fans aren't quite as juiced. The scene, is not quite awake yet, and sometimes that sense of urgency. And then, let's face it, man. Like over the last 10 years, name me the programs and the coaches in college football who've gotten more out of their talent than Mark Stoops. I mean, NFL, just compare and contrast in that conference with a number of NFL guys.
When he took this job, Brock, I said, based on the lineage, the name, it's escape from Lexington. Once he wins 7 or 8 games, has another opportunity, he's gone. Now with the SEC money, obviously, you can stay put for a lifetime, and that's what he's done. But I don't know anybody that could do the job that Stoops has done here. It's almost like a perfect fit, but he's done an A-plus job with a really difficult job.
And then there's a little bit of a sweet spot as that comes out of my mouth. I do think of a number of conversations, Lance, that I've had over the years with coaches at, call them the biggest of blue blood programs. And they will say like, man, it's hard. We get 4- and 5-star guys, but there's so much entitlement, right? And now bring in these free agents making all this big money as well. And entitlement's really hard. Do you know what Mark Stoops doesn't have to deal with at Kentucky? You know what Matt Campbell doesn't have to deal with at Iowa State? I didn't have to deal with that level of entitlement and that level of pay and that level of, hey man, this is what I expect. And oh, by the way, here's what's coming with me as well. And here's some, no, like we're just going to go out and we're going to compete and we're going to play. And I'll be kind of curious over the course of this season and the seasons ahead that, some of these programs that are there, they still get really good talent and get the right kind of transfers, but just don't have to deal with all the drama and all the crap and all the money and all the entitlement. I don't know, man. We may see, well, we've seen it. Mark didn't leave. He's a smart guy. He knows, like, man, I can win 7, 8, 9 games here. And if I develop the right kind of talent or find the right kind of quarterback or find a couple just elite NFL dudes, who knows? Who knows? Maybe there's even more, especially an expanded 12-team playoff. So kudos to him and his staff and his development. And, let's keep an eye on maybe a little more level playing field for some of these programs that don't have to quite deal with the drama of some of these free agent teams.
I think we are starting to get a little bit of feel for who these Group 5 that automatic bid could go to. UNLV making the quarterback switch. They didn't miss a beat. James Madison, losing their head coach in the offseason. They haven't missed a beat. I think those are two teams. But Boise State, they have one loss. That loss was in Eugene, 37-34 in Ashton Genty. Even in that game, 192 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground against that Oregon defense in Eugene. And he goes out this week and just completely slays a solid Washington State team that was ranked 45-24. And it's not just, it's not runs you see with a guy like Jonathan Taylor when he was at Wisconsin and now with the Colts. These are electrifying, like, oh, my God, like, how is he doing this? How is he shedding these tackles? How can he stop on a dime and change direction? He's averaging over 10 yards a carry. He already has almost 1,000 yards and 13 touchdowns. This guy is one of the best backs, and I know this it sounds very hyperbolic, but this guy is one of the best backs we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, there's just nothing that he's missing. And then throw in Lance, and we had them in the Mountain West Championship game last year, and their staff talked about all the people that came at him the previous season, right? That they knew of the talent. He was a 4-star guy out of Texas, and ended up going up there for I think a number of different reasons. But there were folks that came at him the year before, and then after last season, I mean, you can't even imagine how many dollar signs and decimal points there were that once again wanted to try to bring him to one of the power conferences, and he, that loyalty and that character, and that's what they talked about too, man. He is just built right in every way. Physically, he's built right, and there's just nothing he can't do. He's got a gear that most guys that is muscle bound as he is, and I say muscle bound, that's not fair. Muscular as he is, just don't move like that, right? And then just what do you want? You want elusiveness? Do you want short area quickness? Do you want contact balance? Do you want elite game-breaking home run speed? Like just check. So hard to get drafted in the first round as a running back. Bijan did it, right, as a top 10 pick, and he could really catch the ball and everything else out of Texas. But, man, if Bijan was a top 10 pick and this guy continues down this road, I don't know how, if you're an NFL organization, you don't look at it as just an unbelievable difference maker.
But let me ask you this. So he is a true junior. And if you're right, Bijan did go in the first round 2 years ago, but that's the outlier now. We just don't see these running backs go in the first round. But even if he was going to be back into the first round, do you think there's a possibility he comes back just NIL money? I don't know what Boise's got in their collective, but I guarantee you there are teams out there, big-time programs that would pay this guy 7 figures easy to transfer out.
Yeah, I don't think so, because those running backs do know there is a lifespan. It's different, right? It's different than a lineman or a receiver or certainly a quarterback. And that when you hit 30 and the number of those carries, I think you kind of want those carries at that next level, so that if you do produce that second contract you get at the NFL. So yeah, there's good money. There's some amazing ranchers out there, and there is a great friend of mine, Double R Ranch and Double R Beef and Snake River Beef. Like, it is awesome stuff, and I'm sure that they're taking care of him and have paid him fairly well. But no, he keeps doing this, and he runs and he breaks. He's on pace, right? I mean, what's the all-time single-season collegiate rushing record? I'd have to think that the pace that he's on, the yards per carry he's on right now, he's going to have a great opportunity to challenge that.
Sharon Moore has found a running back in Khalil Mullings, but I still can't believe this team is number 10 nationally with how bad this offense is and how one-dimensional it is. I mean, you look at Alex Orji, he is 17 of 30 his last 2 weeks for a combined 118 yards and 1 touchdown. 32 yards against USC, they win. 86 yards against Minnesota, they win. They can't continue to do this, and now they roll into Husky Stadium to take on your alma mater, and this is Saturday night NBC game, weird NBC game there, but, I mean, they can't continue to win with this offense, can they?
No, I don't think so. Nope. And going on the road, and I saw, some different metrics, and I think ESPN's FPI actually liked the Huskies in that game. And
the Huskies were better than Rutgers Friday night. I had your Huskies.
Gosh.
That was a tough loss. You could see how frustrated Jed Fish was, but I know you watching that, the better team. And I give Schiano and Rutgers a lot of credit. They are really improved. They're undefeated. Good for them. But watching that game,
they don't beat themselves.
Washington is better than I thought they would be.
Yeah, they're getting better. And Belichick's doing a really nice job defensively. And you look at a lot of their metrics, and they've got some people defensively, and they found some explosive plays, and their offensive line is getting better. And you put up 520 yards at Rutgers. I mean, that's a physical Rutgers team. And I mean, they're not elite, but they don't beat themselves. And no turnovers and 4 penalties. And well, the Huskies had a lot of penalties and big critical penalties at all the wrong spots. And even though they outgained Rutgers by 200-something yards, couldn't find a way to win. Yeah, that one, I don't know. What's the early spread on the Michigan-Washington game? You got that one in front of you?
Michigan 3.5. I like Washington.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, I think Washington's a better team.
I think they got a great chance. I think the Jonah Coleman's an unbelievable runner. They couldn't give him enough carries in that game. I think looking back, they should have probably, given him even more, and they've got to figure out their red zone. I mean, the red zone has just been they're a couple red zone trips away from being 5-0. I mean, and then that's not even like an exaggeration. Like that Wazoo game, in many ways, they outplayed them, but 16 penalties was just laughable. And then this game, just the critical penalties at all the wrong times was just debilitating. So, that'll be a heck of a game Saturday night. And with me doing the Friday night game, guess what? I'll get to watch that thing in its entirety as well.
It is Unlocked with Fox's Brock Huard, brought to you by mybookie.ag. They will double that initial deposit. Very simple. Just put in that code next round at mybookie.ag. Is the best quarterback in the NFC a rookie? We will get into that on the other side right here on Unlocked. Our friends at Milo's Hamburger invites you to join them in the fight against hunger in our local communities by bringing non-perishable food items to your local Milo's, including canned goods. When you donate a canned good or any non-perishable food item, Milo's will give you a free drink. Together, we can make a difference.
A legendary coach once said, "It's not the will to win that matters. It is the will to prepare to win." Hi, I'm Bobby Humphrey, Vice President of Business Development for Bryant Bank, and I can tell you that our Bryant bankers have the dedication and experience to put together a financial game plan that is right for you. At Bryant Bank, we specialize in community banking and offer personal and business loans, checking and savings account, mobile banking, and treasury management services. Stop by one of our 18 offices across the state of Alabama to find out what unbeatable service and legendary results are all about.
This hour of The Next Round is presented by the Birmingham Racecourse Casino, now featuring 7 days of giveaways with your chance to win a share of up to $125,000. The more you visit the Birmingham Racecourse Casino, the more chances you have to win.
From the creators of The Next Round comes 2 new sites, covercrimson.com and thebarnauburn.com. 2 team sites with the same excitement and information-driven content that you get every day on The Next Round. Live daily shows, recorded shows, free of charge, plus premium content with insider information starting at just $1. And it's the perfect gift for the Alabama or Auburn fan in your family. Covercrimson.com or thebarnauburn.com. Sign up today.
Follow Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. The social media team at Next Round Live is dedicated to giving you daily news conferences and practice video from UAB, Alabama, Auburn, and around college football. Follow and compare to the sites you used to visit. You'll also get the latest highlights and news from the Next Round Daily Show. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss a thing. Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. See more at nextroundlive.com.
By now, you guys know how I feel about my fashion. However, did you know that I care about your fashion choices? Cargo shorts are out, flip-flops are only appropriate on the boat, and please throw away that stained t-shirt from college. You may be thinking, EG, that's all I own. What do I do? Here's what you do. Go to nextround.store and fill your cart with a wardrobe that is approved by me. Stock up on logo t-shirts, hoodies for football season, and hats for every day of the week. Trust me on this one and head over to nextround.store to get stocked up for this season.
Just because you've quit going to the gym, it doesn't mean that you have to quit gym altogether. Dunaway, that is. With our Next Round podcasts open 24/7, 365, you can access gym anytime you'd like. While you may have done away with your treadmill routine, our version of Dunaway is standing by ready to get you back to your absolute best. Find all that lovely Jimmy D-led content on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and in the podcast section of nextroundlive.com. This message is sponsored by Jimmy Crypto Inc. and Jimmy Crypto for President.
Hang out with the Next Round on the go. Whether you're driving to work, running errands, sitting on the beach, or you just need a break from the real world. we can keep you company. Check out The Next Round, Mystery Fifth Hour, and our other shows on your favorite podcast app. We'll meet you there.
Ryan Brown here for The Next Round. Join me and CBS sports analyst Brandon Marcello for the Middle Eight each Monday at 8 a.m. as we look back at the weekend of college football from the SEC to the top 25 of the college football playoff. It's the Middle Eight, presented by MyBookie.ag, code Next Round.
It is Unlocked with our man, Fox's Brock Huard, where we talk college and we talk the National Football League. It is brought to you by our friends at MyBookie.ag, where they have props. They've got side total available right now, the doubleheader, the Titans and the Dolphins, where you can see some awful quarterback play. And then the premier game, Detroit hosting your Seattle Seahawks. We'll get to that game in a minute. Now, the story in the NFL early on has been Sam Darnold and this revival under Kevin O'Connell, and he has got the best quarterback rating right now in the NFL. Second best quarterback rating, though, is a rookie. It's your Heisman Trophy winner, Jaden Daniels. I said before the draft, I think there were two quarterbacks that I thought were can't miss. I thought it was Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. Caleb Williams, I don't know if he's getting the coaching. Watching him against my Rams yesterday, the offense just seems kind of out of sync. I don't know if he's being utilized the right way. I've never been a Cliff Kingsbury fan, but what they are doing right now in Washington with Jaden Daniels has been spectacular. I can't even imagine. You have a guy now that is completing 83%, or what is the total right now?
Yeah, it's right around there.
Yeah, it is. I just want to get it. 82% for the season. 82%.
Crazy. In fact, Friday night down in Eugene, Dylan Gabriel's at like 81.6%. I mean, it just is. It's not sustainable. We know that as the weather's going to get worse, and we have seen some of Cliff's teams over the years. I think a couple years ago, right, when he was the head coach, didn't Arizona start 10-1 before some of the wheels? The wheels come off. So just from a sustainability, we are a little bit early. People looking at how Cliff is going to utilize him and everything else, but of the entire draft class, there was one trait that I thought Jaden had far and away better than anybody else. And that's Bo and JJ and even my guy Penix, who I think is probably number 2 on that list. And that was accuracy everywhere. I mean, he was a deadly accurate guy, even at LSU and even way back. I remember watching him as a true freshman at ASU at like 178 pounds. Like, man, this dude is as thin as it gets. But that ball is on time and on target and on the money more often than not. And man, that trait plays. Speed kills, but accuracy as a QB, and then throw in the athleticism and all that he does as a runner, man, it is Washington certainly feels like 4 games in that they may have very well found the best quarterback in this class, and one that's doing things that we've not seen really ever through 4 games.
Well, I was being a little over dramatic when I said maybe the best quarterback in the NFC. But if you were drafting for the next 5 to 10 years in the NFC, I don't know anybody that you would take above him. Is that fair? Like, I don't think there's any way you would take a Jalen Hurts or a Dak Prescott above him. I don't think you're going to take a Jared Goff. Jordan Love would be one of these questionable guys. He threw 3 picks yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously Caleb's there in the NFC with the Bears as well. And Shane Waldron, we've got some background, and I do, there in Seattle the last few years. He is a terrific guy. I think he's a super smart guy. I think he interviews really, really well, which is why Pete hired him, and ultimately in a big hire for Eberflus there in Chicago, he hired him as well. But when push comes to shove, just from a present standpoint and a in-game, and once you get beyond the first 15 plays, man, we watched it for a couple years in Seattle. There were some big lulls and some big struggles. And you remember Jackson Smith and Jigba, the sound that went around at the Super Bowl when he was on Super Bowl, Radio Row.
By the way, my free play tonight at lanceslog.com, over 48.5 yards for Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, at that point, he made some big headlines because he was asked, he's like, I mean, it was like the most awkward, like 6-7 seconds. Like he didn't know what to say about Shane Waldron. But this system that he's in now, I mean, my co-host Salka said it once. He said it about 15 times through the first 3 weeks. Like, look at the difference between Grubb's system and his plan versus what Waldron the last few years had here. And that's what Caleb, unfortunately is dealing with there. And in Washington, old Cliff, say what you will, man. You give Cliff a dual threat QB, you give Cliff some space, you give Cliff a guy that can throw it pretty accurately. And right now, man, it is, it's all rosy there in DC.
I think the big story in the NFC has obviously been, and we'll see what Seattle does tonight against Detroit as we roll here on Unlocked. But I think the biggest story has obviously been Kevin O'Connell, the Brian Flores defense, and what you've got cooking in Minnesota. And another test, they go on the road. They're an underdog against Green Bay, and Jordan Love coming back from injury. And they're up 28-7, and they're able to hold on and win that game 31-29. I'm going to ask you this, though, because you mentioned J.J. McCarthy, and I think J.J. McCarthy was underutilized in Ann Arbor. It didn't matter. They go 15-0 and win a national championship. But if he doesn't get hurt in the preseason, I don't know if they're undefeated. Is that fair?
Meaning, like, you think JJ would have started the year? I don't think JJ would have started the year.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it was trending. I think the coach was pretty clear about that too.
I'm happy for Sam Darnold. I know you know Sam and watching him at USC, and everybody thought that this guy was flushed, he was done, and I'm glad to hear that because I think a lot of people would have thought, hey, J.J. McCarthy's probably going to be the guy just because we haven't seen anything from Sam, but Sam has been outstanding.
Incredible. Do you know how old Sam Darnold is, by the way?
I would say he's 26 years old.
Yeah, he's 26, 27. Feels like he's like 35, right? He feels like he's been around because he's been just beaten up in a bunch of places and saw all those ghosts up in New York. Not too different than Geno Smith, to be honest with you. And we'll get to Geno and my Seahawks here, I'm sure.
Well, the best Sam Darnold has played up until this point was 2016 when he took over that USC offense. I think it was after, or I guess it was that Friday night against Utah 8 years ago.
Yes. Yeah, and he beat Washington. I think Washington, the year they went to the national title, the national semifinal and lost to Bama. Their only loss that season was to USC and Sam Darnold, who made every single play on third down. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is just phenomenal. And then I think he leads those guys to the Rose Bowl and plays great in the Rose Bowl. And man, I was all in on Sam Darnold. I love the toughness. The accuracy was always a little challenging. The fumbles and the ball security was a little problematic. But, it feels like had he gone to the right place out of school instead of the dumpster fire and the dysfunction that he went into and in that market to boot. But, man, there's something to be said about these Baker Mayfields and these Geno Smiths and these Sam Darnolds that if you can develop the grit, if you can develop the thick skin, if you can continue to grow and not stagnate and not go backwards, hey, man, you get around the right people at the right time. Look at what they're doing. And it's cool to see Sam getting it done. And as far as my Seahawks tonight, let me tell you this, Lance. Are you betting this one?
I do have a play. I've got a side. My free play is Jackson Smith and Jigba. I just don't think these defensive backs, and they're banged up right now with Detroit. I think Geno's going to have some opportunities. I think Grubb still has some wrinkles out there that we haven't seen. I know a lot of people like Tyler Lockett's over. DK has been a home run threat. But to me, the future of these wide receivers is Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, and you get him indoors on a fast track. I think that plays to his strengths. Now, understand this about these Seahawks tonight. If they find a way to do this, I'm going to tell you next Monday, well, they'll have another game, so they could lose to the Giants because it's the NFL. We never know week to week. But if they win tonight, and obviously if they win next Sunday, Lance, your boy here we're gonna have a different conversation about these Seahawks. And even if they do get this one done tonight, understand this. This is without their first string right tackle. This is without their second string right tackle. This is without two of their top three defensive tackles. This is without two of their top three defensive ends, outside linebackers, and maybe without their weak side linebacker. I mean, on their roster of their most unique and gifted human beings, Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Boye Mafe, Uchenna Nwosu, Abe Lucas, they're all there. And unfortunately, none of them will be playing. So if they find a way to win this thing tonight, we talk about, and when we're chatting in November and December, we always come back to the attrition. It's a war of attrition. Well, if they win this game with all those dudes out and you grow those backups and that depth, takes this opportunity and runs with it, your boy's going to be talking about these Seahawks, not as an NFC West contender, but an NFC contender if they can get this done tonight.
It's not often that a month into the season you can say a 2-2 is the best team in the NFL. I did have the Ravens last night minus the 2.5, and they completely thumped Buffalo. I do think this Ravens team, when the true identity, Lamar, and you've got Derrick Henry doing Derrick Henry-like things last night. To me, Baltimore at 2-2 is best team in the NFL. I don't know how you feel.
They're the most physical and violent team in the NFL, and they are gigantic. I mean, that offensive line is just absolutely massive. And I think as this season endures and why they have won perennially, now it's a little different animal in the playoffs against Patrick Mahomes in the level of detail, but why they have won perennially is they just beat you up and you don't want to play them, right? I think if you were to survey, if I flip that around and just put my own little context on it, if you were to say, hey, which team do the other 31 not want to play in their building? I mean, I think Baltimore's got to be on top of that list. San Francisco's probably close, certainly when their roster is healthy, but they're just such a big, bad physical monster. And yeah, man, when they're going, they are no fun. And not to make this all Seattle centric, I would say the same thing about Mike Macdonald and what he has brought to Seattle. And there's a really cool article written by one of my buddies, Brady Henderson from ESPN, covers the Seahawks, and kind of laid out the old school nature of Mike Macdonald, laid out the conditioning test, laid out that Macdonald is, young and vibrant, and what you maybe see on the sidelines is not what you get behind closed doors, where there is a bunch of Harbaugh fiber to him and background to him and toughness to him. And watch tonight, man. This will be a physical affair, because Detroit and Matt Campbell, they are the Baltimore equivalent in the NFC. They want to absolutely beat you up and fist fight you and knock you out. And Seattle's got a bunch of personnel that will step in that ring and make it a pretty good fight.
Yeah, and back to not wanting to play some of these teams. I mean, Derrick Henry, watching that 87-yard touchdown run early on, and, he's obviously a massive human, 250 pounds, but a little bit of gut was coming out, and he's just absolutely flying down the sideline with just a little gut hanging out, and just against a Bills team that had been flawless up until that point last night. But I don't know any defensive back, anybody on that second or third level that wants to challenge that guy one-on-one.
Metabolism slows, Lance. Give the guy a break.
Hey, I'm feeling it myself.
He's not 18 or 22 again. Things change a little bit, but yep, you put him around and behind, that crew and the 1-2 punch again with Lamar and just the physical nature of them, kind of back to our college conversation, like, as the landscapes change a little bit. And obviously the playoffs expanded things, and programs like Iowa State and Kentucky that don't have to get all the 4 stars and all the 5 stars and can be kind of real developers. Maybe there'll be an advantage to them. I look at, honestly, the league very similarly, where there's no hitting in the off season. There's hardly any hitting in training camps. There's very little live practicing, that some of these old school tough teams, Pittsburgh going off to training camp, Baltimore just built in their Raven way and in their image and with that physical play, I think it's going to endure. I think it's going to play that much more. Probably not a surprise that Antonio Pierce, after last weekend, said what he said after the game. Like, man, you can't make business decisions in this league. You make business decisions, you can't be a part of this thing, because those teams that do still want to hit and run and tackle and lay it on the line, I think more often than not are going to find ways to win.
The optics have been disgusting, but Bo Nix has won back-to-back road games. And, they were really dominant in Tampa, which, again, you say in the NFL, I mean, for Tampa to get run out and then to run Philadelphia out yesterday, it just shows you week to week. But Bo Nix, -7 passing yards at halftime. And they're down 6-0, and they find a way to win that game. He's only completing 60% of his passes. His first touchdown pass in the league was yesterday. He's got 4 picks to that 1 touchdown, but they're sitting at 2-2. And I don't know what to read into this team. Their defense is playing at another level. I thought the Jets were really bad yesterday, but you got to give Bo credit that he hasn't been flustered by the turnovers. And I think this experience, and Bo being a 25-year-old kid that has had 1 million snaps in college football at the highest level, has really helped him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they stayed on the road after that game in Tampa, and they stayed out there in West Virginia, where Sean Payton used to have training camp with the Saints, and they really felt like it would bring the crew together. And to win a game like that, where, man, it is hard and you're up against it and the weather's terrible, and it's, you're facing Aaron Rodgers, and you figure out he's just going to make a play or two to win that thing, and they just didn't flinch. And that's kind of the thing I like about Bo. And some of the locals out here in the Rocky Mountains, there's a little, I don't know, not frustration, but Sean Payton is all in on him. I mean, he is all in. It was his guy. I mean, very clearly, Sean got paid. He's got his $100 million contract. He's been empowered, with the ownership group there to make this decision, and he is all in on Bo. And, it kind of reminds me of another Southerner that was a quarterback there in Denver that won games in an unorthodox manner, didn't throw the prettiest ball. I think he even beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in a playoff game, that guy named Tim Tebow way back when. But the difference was there was no one all in on him. Like John Elway was like, I can't watch this. We can't throw for 60 yards, and win these games ugly and win one. Like, no, we're gonna have to go a different direction. Ultimately, Peyton comes in and they win a Super Bowl and go to another one, yada yada yada. But with Bo, there's a little bit of that. Like, I don't care. Right? Like, I don't need all these numbers. I don't need to throw for 83%. I don't need all, like he's been through some crap in his life and he's endured some stuff that, hey man, I know what this league's about. And if I throw for 60 yards, the one touchdown, and we win ugly 10-9, I'll take it. I will take it. And I think that was some of the maturity that Sean Payton certainly loved and why he picked him.
What do you read into Robert Saleh and what's going on in New York? Because it seemed like Aaron Rodgers, we hadn't seen him in forever, gets hurt first series of 2023, misses the entire season, and he comes back. San Francisco, very uneven, but you can understand on the road against that defense. But then he got a little bit better against Tennessee. I thought was really good against New England on Thursday night, 11 days ago. And then, I don't know. I know the conditions weren't great yesterday, but that didn't look like a great Aaron Rodgers. And I don't know if the play calling was any good and Breece Hall wasn't involved in the game plan.
What's interesting, Lance, is I remember chatting way back when with Warren Moon, and Warren played like into his 40s. I want to say even maybe 45. And I was at the University of Washington at that point. I was playing QB there, and he had come back to the Seahawks right after Minnesota and all that stuff. And I remember, we did this little picture shoot. I just remember this for some reason so vividly, and going out and watching him practice. And it was like, oh my gosh. I mean, this guy could still throw one of the prettiest footballs you have ever seen in your life. I mean, you want to talk about someone that could snap off a spot. Any NFL film you want to go look at from the run and shoot or Minnesota, you never saw a wobble. Like that dude just threw the prettiest football. And I remember talking to him like, man, how long are you going to do this? And I think at that point, because he ended in Kansas City even after that, he's like, it's all about the legs. Like once the legs go, you just can't. Now for Peyton, the neck went right before the legs even went. For Drew Brees, the shoulder went before the legs went. So, for a couple of those guys that played really late before they got to the legs were some, pretty traumatic, significant other injuries. When you watch Aaron, don't you see it? Like that Achilles, and just he always had great bounce.
Oh,
he always had great.
He was one of those guys that was so underrated athletically with his ability to, especially in the red zone, some of those runs that he would make and be able to just hold the ball out, get it over the chains, move the sticks a little bit. But there is something missing there, definitely.
Yeah, the bounce and the juice and just the dynamic ability that he had. In 2020 during the COVID year, I got kicked over and did some NFL games. I did a couple Packers games. And he came off the 19 season and felt like, man, I got to get back to basics. And he actually went back and got back to squatting and putting a bar on his back. And he really wanted to, because he knew as you get older, man, it's about that force still, and that and your legs are just so important to it. But I do see, and I know it was wet. I know it was difficult conditions and all of that. And I don't want to, and he probably should maybe get healthier and get better coming off of that Achilles from 1 year ago. But yeah, without him moving around, without him creating, without him extending plays, without the threat of that athleticism, you see just a diminished guy. And then personality-wise, when you asked about him and Saleh, oh man, like I don't know how do you manage Aaron Rodgers?
You don't.
How are you going to do that?
Yeah,
maybe Lance, you know what? Maybe your personality would be pretty good. You're pretty laid back.
Yeah,
you're pretty non-judgmental.
Yeah,
you're pretty fun. I don't know if you ever do ayahuasca or whatever that drug is.
I haven't done it yet. I'm not one of those that likes. And I had this conversation. It's so weird that you bring this up. I had a conversation on the beach this year, and I was talking to my girlfriend, her friends, and somebody brought that drug up, and I was like, I would never want to hallucinate ever. And her question was, why not? And so I think there's two type of people. Two people, like some people like to hallucinate, and then you and I are the type that don't like to hallucinate. I want to be somewhat in control when it comes to something like that.
Yeah, there'll be kind of two kinds of people at Cal Berkeley's game day set. There'll be those from Miami and those from Berkeley.
Right.
So there'll be two very different animals, like at the old Star Wars bar, seeing like very, very different folks there at Cal, where, Aaron did cut his teeth. But
I know.
I don't know, man.
I was going to say, I know when I said that Baltimore, to me, best team in the NFL at 2-2, there are Chiefs fans out there going, what about us? We're going for a three-peat. We're 4-0. And now Rashee Rice is done for the season. Like, there's just something that, and I know Mahomes, and this guy can turn it on. He did it in the postseason last year, but 4 one-possession games they have won. They could easily be 1-3, even 0-4, the way that game started yesterday in SoFi, but they found a way to win these games. But moving forward, as you get into the grind of this 17-game season, and you can't, discount anything that Mahomes can do, but how good is this Chiefs team?
I just feel like some of these NBA teams we watched they just find a way, right? I mean, when you've won that many titles, Lance, right, and you've done it, and you've done it, and you've done it, you know what the whole journey is. I don't know. It's like an NBA game. How much energy do they expend in the first or second or third quarter?
Nah, not a lot.
Right? Not a lot. Usually expend it when you really need it. And it kind of feels that way. Now, they don't feel as a roster is hard to play against San Fran or Baltimore. And heck, when Detroit's fully healthy, I think that roster is loaded. But that dude at quarterback and all that pedigree, they know when to turn it on, and they typically find ways to win. Like the old Mike Huard used to say, winners win in the end. And those guys certainly found a way to do it.
You talked about the 10-1 start for Cliff Kingsbury and the Cardinals in 2021. You had that type of start with the Eagles last year under Nick Sirianni, and now Jalen Hurts doesn't look comfortable. He doesn't look confident. Sirianni's the guy that's going to take the blunt of this, but I don't know. There's some kind of disconnect communication-wise in Philadelphia because Philadelphia has too much talent. So even though they've got injuries at the receiver position, they've got way too much talent to be playing like this.
Yeah, it is. It is surprising to see. It'd be interesting behind the scenes to know, like, what did a Fletcher Cox really mean? I know he was there last year when the wheels came off and everything else, but that strikes me as a locker room. There is just something going on there, right? I've seen it in enough baseball clubhouses, been around enough locker rooms myself over the years that what we see on the outside, and I know the Philly media is brutal, and I'm sure there's tons of speculation, what have you, but yeah, there's something a little rotten from the inside out, unfortunately.
Justin Fields. I am not surprised. I thought it was a better move, and I think we kind of touched about this last week when they were 3-0, and they obviously lose, but I thought Justin Fields, even in the loss, was maybe the best version of Justin Fields we've seen.
Stability. Right? I mean, kind of the antithesis of that, right? Philadelphia has just been like this, and, head coaches and movement and coordinators and all this stuff. And, there's Mike Tomlin in the same state. Like, yep, there's bedrock. Like, hey, man, this is what we do. This is our identity. This is our culture. This goes back to Chuck Noll and, right? I mean, just like, yeah, this is what, not Tom Coughlin, Bill Cowher. Like, this is what we do. This is who we are. And we're kind of unapologetic about it. I really felt like it would be the one place, Lance, where Russell Wilson, frankly, could resuscitate his career, but I don't think he's going to get that chance. Justin Fields keeps doing this. I think it plays exactly into kind of the style, the brand, and, what a rehab it can be for him.
Enjoy your Seahawks tonight. Big game in Detroit. This has been Unlocked with Fox's Brock Huard right here on Disrupt the Media.